All right, I'm going to do a tier list for each of the roles, starting with top lane. This isn't going to necessarily be a what is the best champion to one trick or to climb with tier list. This is going to be a tier list based around what these champions bring to their team and how useful they are, especially if you know they come out of lane even or behind, what they actually can do as a champion. Not necessarily like if this champion has 15 kills, they're the best. It's going to be more what utility, what tools, how easy to play these champions are. All right, so the first champion I have, because they're in alphabetical order, is going to be Aatrox. So Aatrox is a champion that when I think of him, I think about a semi-tanky champion that does a lot of damage and has CC. So because of that, I'm going to say that he is probably going to be always a solid choice. He's someone that, like, if he's not necessarily super fed, he still has knockups. He has like his little leash that pulls people back. He has self-sustain in his kit. He's not a glass cannon completely. He's more of a bruiser. So I think that he's probably a champion that's good on almost any team. So Akali is on my list because in the League of Legends client, she's listed as a top laner currently. But I'm actually not a very big fan of top laners that don't have hard CC. I think that top lane and jungle are the roles that, and support, but are the roles that normally have tanks or bruisers or at least champions that have some form of hard CC or engage or peel or disengage or something like that. And Akali is a champion that if she's not ahead, she brings nothing to her team. And even if she is ahead, the only thing that she brings out is damage. So because of that, I'm going to put her in D tier. So don't play Akali in the top lane unless you're a one trick. I haven't seen a lot of Ambessa lately. It's been a while since I've actually had one in my games. I don't think that she's terrible or anything right now. I think she's, an assassin that's a little bit mobile and has a really interesting ultimate. I think her and Cassante both do. As far as like, some of the newer top laners added to the game. And so because of that, because of the ultimate, I feel like she's probably in B tier. I would call her like basically fine. I don't think that she's overpowered. I think that she's not super popular right now. Um, but I think she still can be, pretty useful as a champion. So I think she fits pretty well in B tier. Aurora is going to be another one of these champions where she's listed as the top lane being her one of her most common roles. I don't really think of her as a top laner that much, but I'm going to go ahead and put her on the tier list anyway. So as far as she goes, she does not have any hard CC either, but she does have a ton of mobility. And then she has an ultimate that is a little bit like Camille's, except for it locks, multiple people inside of it as long as they don't have a blink. So because of that, I'm not going to put her in D with Akali because I think she at least has, a tool to help her team out a little bit where she can catch somebody out and give her team time to get to them. So I'm going to put her in C for can be kind of troll because she's a little bit more useful, but she still isn't a tank, doesn't have any like useful, easy to land hard CC. She's mostly just a damage dealer, but I think she fits in C pretty well. Next on the list, we have Cho'Gath. So as far as Cho goes, currently how he is set up, I actually really like him as a champion. He is a little bit immobile and he can be kited out depending on who's on the enemy team, but he has a knockup that's got a pretty long duration. He has a slow on his auto attacks. He has a silence, which, if champions are silenced even for a few seconds, it can give your team that time to get their abilities back. He can be built basically full tank, and then his ultimate can still, almost one shot carries. So I think that he actually is a really decent champion right now. I'm going to throw him in A for always a solid choice. Because, like I said, even though he can be kited out, outside of that, I think he has an incredible amount of tools to be useful for his team. Darius is one of those champions who at times has been super, super oppressive in the top lane, especially depending on what the champion is that you're playing against him. Right now, I think that top lane has a lot of really decent champions. As far as Darius goes, he's sort of a He doesn't build full tank. He's sort of bruiser. He's very damage oriented. Most of the Dariuses I see run flash and ghost, so that way they can try to get on the more mobile like 80 carries or mages and things like that. But outside of apprehend, which is his one, hard CC tool, he doesn't really bring anything besides raw damage. And that's something that I'm not a huge fan of. He's definitely not terrible though. He's still useful, and if he does get ahead, he can be very oppressive to the enemy team. So because of that, I'm gonna put him in B tier. He's, basically fine. If he's behind, he's not super great, but he's overall a pretty decent champion in the top lane. Dr. Mundo. Okay. So last time I did one of these tier lists, I put Dr. Mundo very low because it was before his rework. I actually think that the current iteration of Mundo, even though he doesn't really have, a full fledged hard CC, I would put him actually as my first S tier. I think that right now he's stupidly strong in his current iteration. He gets incredibly tanky because of his ultimate. He can last in a team fight for a very long time, much longer than, basically any other tank on the board, I would think. And then he actually has surprising damage, especially if he gets, closer to full build, where I've seen him, walk down ADCs and two-shot them, sort of like a Nasus would do, or walk down mages and, kill them in a few attacks if they don't have a dash to get away from him. So I think that he's one that, like, in the mid game, he's useful and extremely tanky. In the late game, he becomes very hard to kill and basically does the same damage that a carry does. So I think he fits very well as my first S ranking. Fiora is a champion that I've felt the same way about for a very long time now. She's a champion that inside of her kit, the only thing that she brings is a small dash, some self sustain, and then damage. Outside of that, her only hard CC ability is her parry, and that's only if she can, time it on somebody else's hard CC. Um, I think that there are just, if you're looking for somebody that does damage and can carry, there are a lot better other options out there. I'm actually going to keep her in D tier for don't play unless you're a one trick. I think if you know all the matchups and you have really good timing with her and you've played 200 games of her or something, I think she can still be useful. Like, she's not terrible, but there's just a lot of better damage oriented champions in the game now, and she is sort of fallen behind. Galio. Galio is actually one of my favorite top laners and mid laners in League of Legends currently. He's got a lot of hard CC. He has a small knockup. He has an AoE taunt. He has a global. I'm a huge fan of global abilities. If you've got a team who picks a lot of magic damage, whether it's all mages or an ADC that does magic damage like Varus or different things, Galio is really good into all of that. And if you pair him with someone who is mobile or dives the back line or anything like that, his ultimate is incredibly useful. So he's going to be my second S tier because I think he just brings a ton of things to his team. And I think that as far as builds go, he can build a bunch of different items. So I just think currently he's just a stupidly strong champion. Gangplank is a champion that hasn't changed much in a very long time. He's, damage oriented. He's definitely a very mid to late game champion where you see the clips of him, one shotting carries or even sometimes, one shotting bruisers or tanks, depending on how fed he is. He doesn't have any hard CC. He does have a pretty good slow. His ultimate's really useful for slowing down the enemy team or not letting people escape or for helping your team escape, things like that. So I don't see him very often. I'm going to put him in C tier for can be kind of troll. I don't think that he's, incredibly hard to play. I think that he can be useful in the right setup, but I just think there's a lot of champions who are better than him currently. Garen has to be one of the champions in League of Legends that has changed the least since he's been put in the game. He is, a bruiser who usually gets pretty healthy. Most Garen's build, mostly damage items, maybe a few bruiser items. I've seen a bunch of Phantom Dancer Garens. He is, however, incredibly easy to play. His silence is very, very useful if you've got somebody on the enemy team who is very reliant on their abilities, like a Malzahar or like anyone who's got dashes to try to like run away or things like that. He also does pretty good damage while being tanky. He doesn't bring any hard CC or anything like that. So I'm going to put him in basically fine. I think that there's, a lot of scenarios where Garen is an okay champion, but there's just some better options out there that do more for your team. But he's not troll or anything if you want to pick him. Gnar is a really interesting champion that you don't see super often in solo queue. You do see him, pretty often in competitive leagues as far as, the amateur scene goes. He's a champion that in the early game, he's pretty good into other tanks because of his range, because he's got percent health damage. And then whenever he transforms, he's got two different forms of hard CC. I think that I would put him in A tier for like always a solid choice. I think that he's got decent damage. He gets pretty tanky. I don't want to put him in S tier because I do think his mechanics make him a little bit wonky. And if you're not good at timing, his transformation and things like that, you could end up wasting it. But I still think that he overall is a very good champion. So I think A tier fits him very well. Gragas is a champion that right now I think I see a lot more in the jungle than I do in top lane. But because the Baus played him a lot in top lane recently, he's on this list because he is being played there. He's a champion that he does have some fun mechanics between his ultimate and his little dash. You can do, some pretty cool combos with that. His damage is actually very surprising for a champion that gets pretty tanky with the items he builds. If he gets ahead, he can one shot carries pretty easily. Um, I don't think that he's like an S tier. I don't think that he's an A tier because I think there's just his combo is not incredibly difficult, but it also is very easy to mess up as well. So for that reason, I'm gonna put him in B tier. I think that he's fine. I think that he goes well in a lot of comps, probably. His ultimate is really cool as far as an engaged tool, a disengaged tool. It can be used a few different ways. So I think he fits in B tier very well. All right, we're going to move on to Gwen. Gwen is a really interesting champion. Her kit's got a bunch of very unique things that it does. It's got percent health damage, it's got a small dash. The thing about her kit that I actually like the most is her little AoE that is sort of like Xin Zhao's ultimate, where you can only damage her inside of it. So even though she generally does not build full tank, she builds like bruiser AP items. That ability makes it so that way she lives a lot longer in team fights than you think a normal full AP champion would last. It makes her tankier. I think that she's really good at killing other tanks, especially if she gets some items and gets later into the game. I think that because she is sort of so weird to play, like her ultimate doesn't feel very good as far as an ultimate goes, at least in my opinion. I think that she's another one that fits very well in B tier. She definitely can be really useful in a lot of games, especially if you, again, need some AP damage coming out of the top lane, but you still need someone tanky. So I think B tier is right about where she belongs. Heimerdinger. This is a champion that right now I don't think he super has a place that he fully belongs. He gets played in top, in ADC, in mid lane, sometimes in support. He doesn't really belong in any of the roles right now, but he was listed in the client as a top laner, so I have him on the list. Because he's got the range, he does have some favorable matchups in top lane for people who can't really get onto him. So he has an easy laning phase as far as top lane goes most of the time. Um, he does have hard CC with his grenade and his ultimate, making him, a bigger stun grenade. But he doesn't get very tanky. He does damage, but it takes him a while to ramp up. He needs 2 or 3 items before he starts feeling, pretty useful. I think that he's a champion that outside of those things doesn't bring very much to his team. Um, I'm going to put him in can be kind of troll. I think that he's one that if you know certain matchups, he can get ahead and be really useful. But if the game is sort of even or he doesn't get kills, like if he's 1-1 at like the 20-minute mark or 15-minute mark, he just doesn't feel like he brings very much to your team. So I think I'm going to put him in the can be kind of troll for that reason. So Illaoi is next. She's a champion that I actually really enjoy playing myself, especially if, I'm auto-filled in top and I'm playing against someone tanky like an Ornn or something else. Illaoi's really fun to play, and she's pretty good. She does pretty good damage. She has a good, ultimate mixed with her E, where if she gets ganked and she gets the abilities off, she has a pretty good chance of, 1v2ing. She does have no hard CC in her kit at all, which is a pretty big detriment to me. I think that not having hard CC from your solo laners makes the game more difficult, especially for your jungler. But I do think that she still is pretty useful, and if she gets ahead, that AoE is a really good zoning effect in a team fight. At the very least, you can make people run away. But that also, because the ultimate is easy to run away from, unless you're CC'd, you can literally just, walk away from it, taking less damage. So for that reason, I'm going to put her in basically fine. I think she's okay to play. She has some good matchups and things, but there's just other champions that do more. Irelia is a champion who, in all of her iterations, has always seemed, pretty good to me, even whenever she wasn't deemed as being very strong. I think that especially in her current kit and her current numbers, that she has a lot of tools that make her useful. She has an AoE stun if you're good at landing the stun. She has a dash to be able to get around onto carries. She usually builds, like Blade of the Ruined King and then some tankier items on top of it. So she doesn't die super, super fast. But she's also one that if she does get ahead early and gets a few items up, she can, hard carry games completely if she gets ahead, especially in top lane now where they have the extra levels and like the free teleport and things like that. I think Aurelia is actually a really decent champion, so I'm going to put her in A tier. I think that's where she belongs at. So Jax is actually the classic split push champion. Back in the day, many years ago, when you thought about losing to a split pusher, it was always Jax. He's been in the game a long time. If he gets ahead, he's very strong 1v1. He has a dash ability. His kit is not hard to use. It's very simple. I think almost anyone can pick him up and play him. But he does have the AoE stun, the dash, the split push potential. I think that he has a lot of tools in his kit that make him useful. Even if he's not super ahead, like I said, if he goes even in lane, he still has that AoE stun. If he gets on top of a carry or he can pill for his own carries, it makes him very useful. Because of that reason, I'm going to put him in A tier as always a solid choice. I think that there's a lot of games where Jax is a pretty good pick. So Jayce is a champion that does have a lot of tools, but because his kit is kind of wonky, switching between the melee to the ranged and stuff, he's a little bit harder to play. He does have a knockback, which is good. He has a slow on his melee kit. He has his speed up and ranged form for him and his allies. I think if he gets ahead, his poke and the ranged form can actually be very, very strong. He also is, if you're good at him, then he actually, can win a lot of 1v1s and things like that. But because I would call him a little bit more difficult, just people knowing when to use what form and things like that, and I don't see him played very often, I'm going to put him in C tier for can be kind of troll. I think that he's a champion that if you're just picking him because a website tells you that he counters somebody else, I think he's a really bad pick. But if you're someone who actually plays Jayce and has put some time into practicing him, then I think he's okay. So I think he fits in C tier. Cassante is an incredibly unique champion. He was played a lot in LCS and in professional League of Legends for a while. I don't know if he's still being played right now, but he used to be, pick ban on a lot of teams in a lot of games for a long time. I think that he's a champion that has an incredible amount of tools, actually. He has 3 different hard CCs, I think. He has the ability to peel. He has the ability to, knock people up, so that can't be cleansed. He has the ultimate that's super, super useful that can be used to, pull the strongest person on the enemy team away from your team if it's an assassin or someone, so that way they can win a team fight. He can use it to single out an enemy carry if he's ahead. I think he has some abilities that sort of makes him feel like the fighter or damage version of Braum, as far as being able to like jump to allies and knock people up and things like that. I don't see him played very often in my games right now. I don't know if that's because he's just like a little more difficult to play, or maybe he has some bad matchups. But I think from a team aspect of what he brings to a team, I think that he's going to be my third S tier. I think that he's a champion that if you put some time into, or your top laner puts some time into, I think that he's very, very useful in a team setting. All right, so this is going to be a controversial take for Kayle, I think. As far as Kayle goes for me, while I have seen the clips of her carrying late game, getting super ahead, once she gets her ultimate ramped up and doing a ton of damage, and then having that ultimate that's basically a free, Zhonya's for your team. I actually think that she is one of the worst champions to have on your team for the top lane, because they almost always lose lane. I don't think there's any lanes where they typically are supposed to win at. They don't have any hard CC, so up until they get to that point that they do scale, they don't bring anything to your team besides the one ultimate in a team fight. They're immobile, so they don't have a dash. They don't have anything to protect themselves. I think maybe that's part of the reason why they lose so many lanes. So I think that it is just currently, anyways, one of the worst champions that you can have on your team for the top lane. I think having to wait for it to scale before it ever becomes useful just eliminates all the usefulness of it, because most games never make it to the 30, 45-minute mark. They're usually decided around like the 25-minute mark. Even the close games, at like 3 or 4 items, Kel usually isn't still ramped up by that point. So I think that she is the first F tier champion for top lane. All right, so next we have Kennen. Kennen is actually one of the mages for top lane that I think is a pretty good champion. He's not incredibly difficult to play. His ultimate is very, very useful in a team fight, or even in a 1v1 setting, it still is pretty useful. Because he's ranged, he has a pretty safe, laning phase. He doesn't usually get super far behind. He usually, comes out ahead as far as CS goes, as long as he doesn't get camped. I think that Kennen is probably in A tier. I think that he doesn't get very tanky. They usually get like Zhonya's, maybe Riftmaker, and then usually are full AP outside of that. But being able to stun people very easily, makes a champion high on my list. And then the AoE ultimate mixed with like Zhonya's, where even though he's not a tank, he can run in ultimate and Zhonya's, so he's not taking any damage. I think that makes him, a pseudo tank, sort of. So I think he fits pretty well in A tier for my list. Kled is actually one of my guilty pleasure champions. I think that he has a really awesome theme. I think that he has a few different hard CCs between his ultimate, which I think is one of the best ultimates in the game, especially coming out of the top lane. And then he has his, bear trap on a chain that can yank people back, especially champions that don't have a dash. He has his dash where he can follow champions and attach to them. I think that the ultimate, basically being like a Shirelia's, gives your team move speed to engage. He's very much a pull the trigger champion, especially in like a game where your team's actually in voice comms and stuff. Kled can completely, engage a fight by himself and turn the tides of a game completely because of that ultimate. So I'm actually going to put him into S tier. I know that that's going to be controversial. I know that he's not, played super, super often, but I think he's a really good champion personally. Malphite is going to be another one of those champions who just suffers from having an old kit. He is very easy to play, which puts him harder up on the list, or further up on the list, rather. He has an ultimate that, while it can be dodged with flash, it is still very useful. It's an AoE knockup. The knockup lasts a pretty decent amount of time. He can use it to escape, he can use it to engage, but I think that because outside of that ultimate, his kit gives him almost no tools to be useful for his team. He has a small slow with his Q, but his W and E, unless he's in like a 1v1 scenario where we're right on top of someone, they just do almost nothing for him. or for his team. Because of that, I'm going to put him in basically fine because I do think a good Malphite ultimate can open up a team fight. I do think, if he goes full AP, he can one shot a carry. If he's with someone like a Yasuo or one of the other combo champions, Misfortune, something like that, he can be a champion that opens up his team to do things. But just thinking about just the champion himself in any comp, I don't think he's great. I don't think he's troll or anything. I think he's just fine. So I think B tier is where he probably belongs. Maokai is a really interesting champion because he doesn't really have a home right now. He gets played, I see him more support than anything else. He originally was a top laner or a jungler. But he gets played more in support right now. But just looking at him as a champion, he has, Twisted Advance where he can dash to someone and root them. He has scouting abilities with his saplings. He has a small displace on his Q that can sort of hold people in place for his team. He has a good ultimate. It's not incredible because it's so slow moving, but it does have, a very wide range of area that it covers as far as away from him and then also the width of it. He's not super difficult to play. He does get tanky for his team. He has good self-sustain on his passive that heals him from abilities. I think I'm going to put him in basically fine or always a solid choice. I think I'm going to put him as like the bottom of A, I believe. I think that he's right on the edge of A and B anyways, but I think his ultimate is better than say like Malphite ultimate, and then his Twisted Advance is a good, tool to get onto people. We're going to put him in A. We're going to leave him there. Mordekaiser is a champion that has been around a long time again. He's had his kit changed a couple of times. They made him a bot laner for a while on one of his reworks. But I actually think the current iteration of Mordekaiser is very, very strong. I think that his ultimate can be used in multiple ways. He can use it to catch a carry out and kill them. He can use it to, if there's somebody, diving his own carries, like a Lee Sin or a Zed or somebody else, he can ult them before they kill his carries and give his carries a chance to do damage. I think that he's got, his pull ability to CC someone and pull them to him. He builds damage, but he does get pretty tanky. He usually has like Rylai's, Riftmaker, some tanky items on top of it. I think as far as the further into the game he goes, he never really falls off. He just stays pretty useful. I think he overall is a very good champion. So I'm going to put him in A tier. I think he's always a solid choice, especially if your team does need that magic damage. I think he's just a good champion overall. Nasus is another one of those champions where it's like, if we make it to late game, I can carry, maybe, if he gets enough stacks. His Wither is actually pretty decent against champions that don't have movement abilities like dashes. It lasts a long time. He does do good damage if he makes it closer to late game. He does get pretty tanky. I don't think he's as bad as Kayle as far as, we have the late game champions go. He's not that bad. But I think that he's just a champion where if he is behind or if he's trying to split push and he's not really grouping with his team, he doesn't split push that fast until he gets some items and some stacks. I think that he's just okay. So I'm gonna put him in C tier. That can be kind of troll. I think that he's a fantasy of someone, getting to late game and one shotting people. That's why people play him. But he just doesn't bring very many tools for his team. So he's gonna sit right in C tier. All right. So normally when it comes to top lane, I don't like champions that just bring damage and no hard CC. You should know that by far if you've watched the rest of the video. But whenever it comes to Olaf, the thing that he has that makes me like him at least a little bit more is that his ultimate stops him from being CC'd himself. So I think he is a champion that if you're playing into a team that if you're picking him later in the rotation or you're playing against a team that you know that they're probably going to be playing something with a lot of engaged tools, a lot of CC against like an Ornn, a Braum, a Sejuani, those types of champions, Olaf's ultimate gives him the ability to basically just run through them onto a carry. I think that maybe he has a hard time getting ahead sometimes because he doesn't have a lot of stuff in his kit to get through lane. He has a little bit of a slow, but that's it. But if he can come out even or even get ahead, I think that because that ultimate, he can be useful into those comps. He's sort of like a CC comp's worst nightmare, especially if they only have like one carry. If they play like a supportive mid laner or something, he can go in and kill the ADC, and then the team really has very little they can do against him. So I'm going to put him in B tier. I think that he's okay. He's not incredibly strong or anything, but he definitely has his place as long as you're picking him for a specific reason. All right. Next, we have Ornn. Ornn is by far one of my favorite top lane champions. I think when I'm looking to play on an amateur team, finding a top laner that at least plays Ornn sometimes is one of the most important things for me. I'm going to put Ornn in S tier just right off the bat because I think that he is not very difficult to play. He can build full tank and can still do a lot of damage if you can land his knock up and you learn how to use his brittle effectively. Him being able to buy items for his team is super super great. You can make someone who's already ahead a little bit more ahead, or you can make someone who's a little bit behind, give them some free extra stats. His ultimate is one of the best team fighting ultimates in the game, especially if it's comboed with any of the other AoE ultimates. He just overall is a very, very good champion, and he's a champion that I would never say no to having an Ornn top lane on my team. So he's definitely another one of the S tier champions. All right, so Pantheon is one of the basically builds only damage champions that I'm pretty okay with. So my reasoning for that is he has pseudo tankiness with his shield ability. He can block some damage as long as he times it correctly. He has a point and click gap closing stun that's really useful. His ultimate is basically a global. It can be used a lot of different ways. He can use it to get back to lane. He can use it to roam to another lane or get to a team fight more quickly. He can use it to chase people down. He is one that if he gets behind, he doesn't have a lot of tools. But because of the ultimate, if he gets behind, if he roams correctly, he can actually get back into the game using that. Because of that, I think that he fits pretty firmly in A tier. I think that he's not difficult to play and he has the tools to at least be useful. Poppy is an interesting champion. I don't think that she's bad, but I think she's more a champion that you pick because the enemy team has a lot of dashes or movement abilities, or you're picking her for her ultimate to try to use it to break up a team fight to give you numbers advantage. Um, I think in the top lane, because you're not usually by the walls unless the enemy has bad positioning, that sort of eliminates her knockback ability. So I don't think she's bad. I think she's very niche. I think that she probably fits in C tier. She's not. There's a lot of other champions that if you're blind picking it or you're just picking it not to counter someone that are better than Poppy, but she's still fine. And like I said, she is good when you're picking her specifically into a team that has those dashes. Like if you're against an Ari or somebody else who dashes around a Lucian, things like that, then Poppy has her place. All right, so Gwen. To be honest with you guys, I want to put Gwen in F tier because I don't like dealing with range top lanes. I think that they're just not great for the game. Gwen has been one that has been there for a long time because she doesn't really fit as a normal ADC. I guess because she has the self pill and the roaming abilities and stuff. I'm going to try not to let my bias show. I know that she can get really ahead and really fed and carry games, but I think that she doesn't have the tools that I want in a top laner personally. Um, I'm going to put her in C tier for can be kind of troll. My reasoning is going to be that if you have her in top and you have a normal ADC, then that leaves your only front line to be jungle and support. So depending on how early in the rotation Quinn is picked and stuff, you may not realize you have a Quinn top. And it could be really difficult to play around that if you're not expecting it. So I'm going to put Quinn in C tier. Renekton has been really popular in pro play, especially depending on which league you're talking about. Um, I think that he has a lot of good matchups. I think because he has a stun, his auto attack range is pretty large for someone who's melee. He has a dash, he can get onto people pretty easily. His ultimate lets him get tanky even if he builds full damage. I don't know all of his matchups, but I think overall he's an okay champion. He doesn't have any huge team fighting tools, which is something I usually like, but I don't think he's bad by any means. I think Renekton probably fits into B tier. I think that he's fine. I think that you can play him in most games and, it'll be pretty okay. To me, Riven is a champion that most people play because they're looking to make highlight plays or they're looking to hard carry. I don't think outside of that she brings very much to her team at all. She has some hard CCs with her stun and her Q. She has an executing ultimate, but she has no actual real team fighting abilities. She doesn't, she's not super tanky. She doesn't have a big AoE. She very much is a, hey, look at me champion. And I don't put much stock into that. I don't think she's an awful champion. I think she's better than Fiora and Akali. So I would put her like in the same range as like Gwen. She's in C tier. She can carry games. If you're good at her, she can look like a very good champion. But outside of that, I just don't think that she fits teams very well. All right, so Rumble is a champion that is a lot more liked in pro play, especially in other regions, than it is in NA. He does a lot of damage. He has a slowing ability. I think he does well into matchups in top lane. That's why people like him, because he can normally come out ahead depending on who the enemy top laner is. His ultimate is a good team fighting ability. It's an AoE damage ability. It can force people off of an objective, or it can do enough damage to win a team fight. He doesn't have any hard CC though. He doesn't have a gap closer. If he misses his ultimate, or people can just walk straight out of it depending on how it lands. So I don't like him as much as other people do, but I think he's okay. I'm going to put him in B tier. I think he's fine. I think that if you know a matchup he works really well in, then he's probably good. Or if you need, magic damage from top lane, he's fine, but he's just not incredible. So I wasn't super sold on Set whenever he was still new. He's been around a while now, and I've had more time to play against him and with him and things. And I actually think that he's a really good champion, especially right now. His ultimate can be used in a bunch of different ways. It can be used to, if he's getting low health, he can use it to escape a team fight by ulting the enemy support out of the fight to get himself away. He can use it to, if he's trying to get onto an enemy ADC or an enemy mage, he can ult a tank on top of them and get to their carries. He gets tanky. He doesn't, even if he builds damage, he still is a pretty tanky champion. His, I believe it's his W, the one that does true damage, gives him, like, even if he's getting beat down in a fight, if he gets a good W off, he can just completely one shot a carry from 100 to 0 because it does true damage. Like, there's been times I've seen a Fed set and his W has hit me for like 3,000 damage and it's true damage. So I think he overall is a pretty good champion. I don't think he's an S tier, but I think he's definitely A. I think that he's a good champion with a lot of good tools inside of his kit. All right, Shen. So we have another global ability, a true global ability this time that can go anywhere on the map. I think that Shen is one of the most useful top laners in the game. You can use that ultimate ability to save someone in another lane. You can use it to run away yourself. If you're getting cornered, you can hide in a bush and ult away to get away from them. You can combo it with a carry jungler like a Nocturne. Nocturne can ult in on someone, and you can Shen ult on top of them to give them a big shield, and then it now becomes a two-person gank. The ultimate is just an incredible tool. He has a dash and a taunt. He can go over walls. He can taunt people. He has the AoE ability that blocks auto attacks. So if you're against a team that has 2 or 3 auto attackers, that's an incredible ability to have. I think Shen is going to be my next S tier champion. I think that there's never a bad game to have a Shen on your team personally. Next on the list, we have Singed. I know that a lot of Singed players are known for like proxying and things like that, especially in high elo solo queue, but I'm going to look at it again mostly from a team perspective of what he brings to a team. I think his ultimate is sort of like a worse version of Mundo ult, like Mundo ult light. It's still useful. He has a slow ability. He has a fling that can turn into a snare if he lands it inside of his glue trap. He's very fast. They almost always build Rylai's, so their poison trail slows people. I think that he's overall an okay champion. He can, run into a team fight, fling somebody out. He can fling somebody over a wall and give your team numbers advantage. He can chase somebody down who's trying to get away and fling them back into your team. So I'm going to put him in B tier. I think he's an okay champion. I think he has games where he would be useful. He overall is just okay. So next on this list we have Sion. He's been getting very, very popular over the last year or two, especially because of the Baus playing him and going into LCS and stuff with that team, Los Ratones. He has two different hard CCs between his ultimate and then his Q knockup. You can build him a few different ways. He can go full AD. He can go, tank. His ultimate's sort of a global. It's a very good engage tool though, especially for like lane ganks. He can do a ton of damage. He gets incredibly tanky, even in a lost team fight. If he has good items and stuff in his passive, he can still, kill another champion, or he can take a tower or an inhib with his passive. So he overall is a pretty solid champion. So I'm going to put him in A tier. Always a solid choice. I think the Sion's pretty good in most teams. All right, so we've got Tahm Kench, my favorite catfish, the River King. As far as Tahm Kench goes in the top lane, I think that he's fine. I think that his kit is more built around being a support, but he still does pretty good damage. He has the eat ability. He can, once you get to team fight stages, he's still the same champion. Because his kit around like being able to save his teammates and stuff is more built to be in a lane with other champions, I think that makes him fall a little bit further down the list. I'd put him in like B tier. I think he's okay. He's fine. He gets pretty good. If he gets ahead, he's a really good champion. He'll have a little bit more gold in top lane. I think he'll get a little bit tankier. So he's, especially if you're picking it into certain matchups, I think that Tahm Kench is probably in B tier. Teemo is a champion that I have very strong opinions about. And the reason for that is I was actually a Teemo main in like season 2 or 3 around that time, mostly in Twisted Treeline, but I played a ton of Teemo back then. I think that as far as top lane goes and the role of top lane, which is usually being a bruiser for your team, Teemo fails in that regard pretty hard. Like he does not fit that role at all. I don't think that he's awful. I don't think he's F tier. I don't even think he's D tier. I think he's somewhere middle of the pack. I think I'd put him in C. Can be kind of troll. And my reasoning for that is because he doesn't fit the normal role of top lane. But if you get a Teemo that gets ahead and you get to later in the game where he's got, 3, 4 items, his cooldowns are lower and his damage is higher. His shrooms, if the Teemo player actually, sets up before fights, whether it's an inhib, a dragon, a baron, if he actually sets up before the fight and the enemy team doesn't bring enough vision, then he can completely turn a fight. Like if a carry walks into 2 mushrooms, they can be completely out of a fight, making it a 4v5. So he is useful, but he just doesn't fit the role of a top laner. So because of that, for me, he's going to be C tier. Trundle's an interesting champion to try to rank because he's got a lot of stuff in his kit that works really, really well. And then he has some things in his kit that makes him a little weird. So he doesn't have any way to really get on to other champions. He has this pillar, which slows people. He has this AoE, which speeds him up. But if he's against, someone with a dash and he doesn't pillar correctly, then they just get away. But if you have a good Trundle, he can pillar under a Tristana mid jump and stop her jump. He can stop other dashes. He can use the pillar to stop channels on enemy champions, like for teleport or like Shin ultimate, things like that. He can cancel those, which is really interesting. He's good into tanks because of his ultimate. He's like a tank killer, basically. He's a bruiser that kills tanks. but he doesn't have enough hard CC himself outside of the pillar. He doesn't bring anything that really helps his team. He mostly is just like damage and a split pusher, but I wouldn't call him like one of the best split pushers. He's just okay. Uh, so he's really just a damage dealer, a damage dealing fighter. I think I'd put him in B tier. I think he's fine. I don't think he's a bad champion. I think there's just a lot of champions that do more. Urgot is another champion that I used to play a lot of before he got reworked, but the current version of Urgot I think is actually very good. He has a hard CC and his little dash that throws people over top of him. He has good damage. My favorite thing about him, honestly, is his ultimate. You know, it's sort of like a gen ult where if someone is running away low health and you hit the ultimate, then you can yank them back and get a kill with it, or you can, use it earlier in the fight and then slowly whittle them down and then pull them in whenever they think it's a close fight, but really it's not. I think that he's pretty good in a lot of matchups. I think that he fits into almost every team comp because he's a tanky bruiser, but who builds, pretty tanky. Not full tank, obviously, but enough tank items that he can soak up some damage. I'm going to put him in A tier. I think that he's always a solid choice in almost every team comp. So my opinions on Vladimir have stayed the same for a few years now. I don't think there's really anywhere in the game that he fits specifically as far as a role, including top lane. The only thing from a top laner that he does is that he gets kind of tanky. He doesn't have any hard CC. He's not super incredible damage unless he gets super far ahead. I think that he's okay whenever you're playing him in the melees because you can at least, win lanes against people and maybe try to keep them down. But as far as his tools and his own kit go for his team, he doesn't do a whole lot. So I think I'm going to put him in NC. Can be kind of troll just because, like, he's fine. He could be like bottom of B tier, I guess. But outside of damage and just being like a little bit tanky, he just doesn't really do enough for me. Volibear is a kind of weird champion where parts of his kit aren't really made to jungle, parts of his kit aren't really made for top lane, but he does get played up there, especially the like Dusk and Dawn Volibear with Flicker Blade or Rod of Ages, sort of like AP-ish Volibear. I actually really like him as a champion. I think he's got a cool kit. I think he's fun to play, especially if you go, the AP route. Um, I think that the ultimate is really, really useful. You can use it to dive top lane. You can use it to chase people down at the end of a team fight. If he gets ahead, he does pretty decent damage because of his healing on his, I think it's his W. He gets pretty tanky and he stays in team fights pretty well, especially if he's not getting CC'd. I don't think he's incredibly strong, but I don't think he's bad at all. I would throw him into B tier. Warwick is sort of very similar to Volibear. They've sort of got kits that are reminiscent of each other. He has a fear, he has a hard CC in his ultimate, he has sustain in his kit, he has blood scent so he can get a speed up when people are low. I think that Warwick is definitely very much a jungler. He's listed in top lane currently in this patch. I think that maybe he's just good into certain champions because of his sustain. For me, I would put him basically in the same vein as Volibear. I think he can be useful. I think the issue with him is that Blood Scent specifically is more geared towards jungling, but he's not a bad champion. He gets beefy, he has hard CC, he's not hard to play, so I think he fits very well in B tier right next to Volibear. Xin Zhao is a very interesting champion. I think he's only played top lane into certain matchups. I don't see him very often, but he definitely does get played. He has a few different builds he can go, especially with Dusk and Dawn in the game. He can go, AP hybrid. He can go AD bruiser. He can go full damage if he wants, even though it's not usually the best build. He's pseudo tanky like Gwen with the ultimate. He has a thing where he can go in and engage, and only the people inside of his AoE can attack him. So if he's against a team with a lot of ranged champions, it makes him tankier than he seems to be. I don't think he's incredible, but I think he's an okay champion. He's fine. I think he fits pretty well into B tier. He's okay to play. He's not troll. There's just better options out there. Yasuo is another one of those champions, sort of like Teemo, where I don't necessarily like them very well on my team, especially in the top lane. He's a champion that doesn't really get tanky at all. He essentially builds just ADC items. He can stop damage a little bit with his win walls. He probably has some favorable matchups where he can win lane and top, and if he gets super far ahead, maybe he's more useful. But in a lane where he's like even or slightly behind, I don't think Yasuo really brings anything to his team at all, especially from the top lane where you're looking for like some beef, basically. So I'm gonna put him in C tier. I think he can be kind of troll. Where if you're really good at Yasuo, maybe you can make it work, but the average Yasuo in top lane is probably not super useful for his team. Okay, so next we have Yone. So he's the second of the Wynn brothers, and I actually think that he is just the better version of Yasuo. He has, hard CC. I think his ultimate is easier to land than Yasuo's is. He does half magic damage, so if you're in a team where you have a lot of AD, then he has the magic damage profile. He has the like tiny Z ult on his E where he can go chase people down and then dash back if he wants to, get into a team and try to assassinate someone. So I do think he's a little more useful than Yasuo. He suffers from the same things where he doesn't really get tanky. He only brings damage if he's not ahead. He still has a cool ultimate that could be useful, but he doesn't do a lot outside of damage. So I'm going to put him in the bottom of B. He is better than Yasuo, but he's still, there's a lot more top laners that are more useful than he is. Yorick is a champion that I've liked a lot for a very long time. I would like, from my personal bias, to put him into S tier. My reasoning is because I think that he is by far the best split pushing champion in the game. I think that the maidens are great. His little ghouls are great. He is basically a better Nasus that is more useful with his Q. Nasus is a little more damage, but he's a more useful split pusher. I would want to put him in S, but I think that he fits into A because while he is a great split pushing champion, I don't think that he brings very much outside of that to his team. He doesn't have any hard CC, so I can't really put him in S for that reason. Last but not least, we have Zaahen, or just, the better version of Aatrox, basically, or the different version of Aatrox, depending on how you want to look at it. He has, hard CC. He has his revive. He gets very tanky. He has a lot of sustain. He's hard to take down if he gets ahead. He is overall just a very good champion. I think him and Aatrox are about on the same level for different reasons. I think that he is really, really strong. I wouldn't call him overpowered. I think that he fits very well in A tier. I think that he is a good pick in most games. All right. Well, that has been my top lane tier list for 2026. If there's anything you think I got wrong or any champions I missed, let me know in the comments. I specifically did leave out the ranged top laners that are really common, like Vayne and Varus, because while they are played top lane a lot, I think that they're not necessarily top lane champions. I'll do a separate video about them. But outside of that, if you had any questions, opinions, you just want to tell me I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching my video and have a great rest of your day.